Testing 1, 2. Mark, what's happening, man? Can you hear me okay? You able to hear me? Can you hear me?
Now I can. Hey,
There,
Ed, how you
there.
doing?
Good. How you doing, Mark? Sorry, I was a
I'm
couple
good.
minutes late. It was getting the kids out of the house a little early. They're headed over to my parents' house. So the
Okay.
snow threw a whole different curveball into the schoolwork.
I can imagine. I was surprised to see that much this morning.
Oh, it's unbelievable. I was going to get up and go for a run, and I'm like, I'm going to do it at 2:00, break up the day. And so I'm laying there. I'm like, God, it's quiet out, like it's snowing. And it's 6:00, right? And I never sleep
Yeah.
till 6. So I get up and I look out the window. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I'm like, this is no way. Just fire it up. And at that point, it looked like it was going to keep snowing the rest of the day. So
Yeah.
how are things going at your house?
Pretty good. We're it does so this week it's starting to feel like Groundhog Day. I think we've been doing all right the first few weeks of this, but
Yeah.
this week's a little bit hard. My daughter's on spring break, so that's a
Okay.
little tough for her. She's a
How
little
old is
bored.
she?
My son, she's in 8th grade, so she's 14.
Okay.
And I think, the reality is starting to set in that all the 8th grade graduation stuff probably isn't going to happen. They've been trying to hold out hope, but it's
Yeah.
just not looking too good.
So will they do, I mean, I don't know what you can do virtually, but will they do something for the kids or some sort of tribute to them or something like that?
I would think so. I certainly hope so. They haven't said a whole lot.
Right.
I'm expecting we'll hear more next week once they get back from spring break because, at that point they've got, the 8th graders have like 5 weeks left until they were supposed to be graduating. So we'll see.
So they get out in June, second week of June,
They
or
get out. Well, the school gets out in June. The 8th graders are supposed to graduate like the day after Memorial Day.
oh man, that's brutal. So have they given you any indication, like the summer, what's going to happen with summer programs and things like that?
Not yet, because my daughter, she's going to Trinity High School in River
Mhm.
Forest, and obviously she's planning to get involved in a number of different things, and all that's kind of on hold. They're waiting to see how this is all going to play out and what kind of guidance the government gives us.
It's yeah. Now, so Trinity, they're whose sister school? Who are they connected to?
Well, I guess they're loosely connected to St. Pat's at this point in time,
Well,
because there's nothing else really
you
over
can't let that
there. And
happen, huh? What the heck, man? You can't let that
uh,
happen. Yeah.
yeah, no, but yeah, they don't really have a close connection because they're kind of out there, in their own unique area,
Is
out
is
there in River
Fenwick
Forest.
is Fenwick co-ed?
Yeah, Fenwick is
Is
co-ed.
okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
God, it's well, hopefully these kids have some semblance of summer. I mean, God knows they deserve it after what they've been through.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's and you try not to put too much stock in some of the things you're hearing, but like even at ACADIA, they're starting to talk of, even if things start to ease up, they might not have people come back into the office until September. So it sounds like, a lot of people have a play it slow mentality right now.
Which is probably the smart move. I mean, all these conversations I'm having, there's going to be a new normal. It's not going back to our old normal. And then how does this change? I look at my wife and they had this whole building for Comcast Business in Oak Brook. What happens if these people start killing it at home and they're working remote and they realize that this is something that they can do in the future? I mean, how does that look? I mean, do you bring them back just to bring them back, or do you ease into it, or what do you do? It's
Yeah.
I don't know. It's gonna be interesting what the other side of this whole thing is like, and we don't really know. So how's it affecting you guys? I know we talked about it a little bit, but
It's well, it's had a huge impact. I mean, obviously, we shut down our employees. So I lead, an outside sales team, and March 12th, we let them know that you got to stay home. Keep your safety and health in mind, and stay home. And so we've got an outside sales team that's been working virtually for the past 5 weeks now. So that's been different. And then our customers, our healthcare providers, we're calling on physicians and physician offices and hospitals, and obviously their world is completely upside down. So it's been an interesting thing to navigate, just because everybody's adjusting, right? And I think the neat thing is that a lot of physicians have pivoted pretty quickly. I think telemedicine has really come in handy during this time. The fact that they loosened up some of the reimbursement around telemedicine, I think, has been huge for those providers. But even still, I've talked to some customers, they're still only seeing 50, 60%, if that, of their what they normally did. So it's been drastic.
Yeah, man. Well, we'll talk about
They've had to lay off staff. Nurses have been furloughed just because there's not enough to do.
Well, and that's the thing. So then what happens, right? Like, what happens to those nurses? I mean, then what is the, does a nurse qualify for anything? Do physicians qualify? I mean, it's just the whole. I have a gentleman, John O'Sullivan, who's written a couple books in youth sports, and he's a great guy, and he's out in Bend, Oregon. And his wife, he was a pro soccer player, pro soccer coach. He wrote the book Changing the Game Project. I mean, it's unbelievable stuff for kids and youth coaches, and he's very, very successful. And his wife was a really successful surgeon, but like a niche surgeon, and it had something to do with orthopedic, but it was very, very niche down. People would fly into Bend to have surgery with her. She had to close her practice down. I mean, she was killing it. Killing it. And she had to close the practice down, and she did it right away. Like, she didn't wait for everything to really be told they have to do it. But her thing is, I don't know when it's going to open back up. I just don't know what's going to happen. So, and we'll get into all that. But all I'm going to do to start the recording is I'll welcome you. I'll say it's great. I'll probably reference a little bit about how we know each other. Let me do one thing real quick. So I'll talk about how Jason introduced us.
Okay.
Have you talked to him lately?
I did. I talked to him probably 2 weeks ago. We stay in touch via text, but talked to him a couple weeks ago.
He's the best. So he and I yesterday were having this great conversation on his Encore interview. And I told him, because we talked for like a half hour before we started recording. I said, Jason, whatever you do, don't let me forget to push record, because I paused it because of one of the stories he was telling me. I go, my guy can't hear this story. All right. I got to, and I'm not going to edit it out before I send it to my editor. It makes no sense. And so he goes, okay. So then we're like 25 minutes into the episode, and I'm like, God, this is good. And I look up, I'm like, you got to be shitting me. Out of all the interviews I've done, it's the only second time it's happened. Once was with one of my former players down in Houston, and I forgot to hit record. So we're recording right now. So, but it was funny. So we had to go back and start all over. I'm just looking at, I'm trying to figure out. So he'll be episode 76, because I'll reference the episodes he is on. And then your episode will drop. I have Rob this week, Jason next week. It'll either be 2 weeks from today or 3 weeks from today. I got to look at the earnings schedule. We have a whole bunch in, but when I interview guys that I know, and plus it's so relevant for you, what you're going through right now, it's something you can, when you get it to your people, if they want to edit it. Here's some of the things folks do with the podcast. They have internal folks edit it and share it with their teams, or some people actually use it for recruiting. I know you guys are scaling. Interesting. Yeah. I saw who you guys are partnering with to hire the sales force too. What is it? What's it called? Mixed talent. Mixed talent. Right. Yeah. Now, how did you get connected to them? What's the connection there?
So, a couple of connections. I know one of the guys who kind of founded it, if you will, or started it up. Just from my years in the industry, he used to recruit for different organizations back when I was at Baxter. So we stayed in touch. You kind of, over the years, you connect with people who kind of are good at what they do, and you develop a relationship. And then one of the women at ACADIA in our talent acquisition department also has a history with one of the partners of that firm. So, when we were deciding to expand, we we brought in a few people just to kind of kick the tires and see what was out there. And, they seem to be a good fit. And, when it comes to recruiting and finding talent, you got to have people who kind of get it and who are aligned to what you're looking for. So.
No, it was awesome. I was looking at some of their stuff yesterday. I don't know how, I think you might have liked one of their posts and that led me to look at their stuff because that's what I did before I launched the Molitor Group for 7 years. I was VP of Ops of a recruiting firm. But what we did is we specialize in placing former military in jobs throughout the country because our principal, who my business partner was a high school buddy who played football at the Naval Academy. And just a great guy. I was literally the only guy in the leadership team who was not former military. So here I come in like smart ass. I think I can joke about the Air Force guy. Well, we had no Air Force guys. I could joke about like the Navy guys, the Marines. I could tell nothing. All right. They killed me. Like, and like I tried to dip my toes in the water. It didn't work out, but I loved it. I mean, it's a great business. And for you guys to scale at that level, to have a partner you trust is huge.
Yeah.
What's your time frame?
Yeah. And so we're aiming to build the team out between now and really the end of Q3. We want to be ready to roll in Q4. We're anticipating that we'd get the new indication right towards the end of the year or very early part of 2021. So, that timeline is fluid. We still have to submit our application for the new indication, but that's kind of roughly what the game plan looks like.
So what geographical areas are you looking at?
The whole country. Yeah. I mean, I just, so early this year in January, I brought on 4 area sales directors. And then what we're currently involved with, which has been interesting because we've had to kind of go through the final interview stages during COVID. So, we were doing final interviews with Zoom. We're hiring on 16 more regional sales managers. And then mid-year is when we'll probably launch, the sales reps, sales specialists, and we'll be looking to bring on about 125 of those roles over the course of, Q2, Q3. So, but it's national.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, think about the timing of it. I mean, you guys got a book waiting to write. I mean, to be able to do this during this situation is unbelievable.
Yeah. It's been interesting, especially, doing the region sales manager build out in the midst of all this. And that's actually, when this was all brewing early part of March, we were set the week of March 9th, we were supposed to have final interviews. So we were flying like 10 or 12 candidates in. We were supposed to be out in San Diego, and we had to, myself and the HR business partner made the call to say, hey, you know what? We cannot take the risk of having all these candidates fly across the country and come in for live interviews. So we made the call to do it via Zoom. But it worked out.
Could you imagine if you got them here and all of a sudden they were stuck? Now you have like,
exactly.
I mean, that could have happened,
Right. Or God forbid someone, got sick in the process. You got to think of people's health and well-being first.
Yeah. I was supposed to go the 12th of March. I was supposed to, well, first of all, Porter screwed up my whole March. Okay. So Loyola losing completely screwed up my solo weekend away from the family down. Like I do it every year. I go to St. Louis. I got a huge room. I sit there. All I do is watch basketball and hang out. So I'm at our regional championship, Batavia regional championship. We get completely hosed in overtime. And I'm watching the Loyola game at the same time. The Loyola game ended earlier. I'm like, okay, this weekend just went to hell in a handbasket. Then I'm supposed to go out skiing in Utah with my buddy. He's supposed to go to Deer Valley. We're watching I don't know what game I was watching, but then he had me click over to the Oklahoma City, Utah Jazz game because that's when everything happened. And I have a mom who's been sick for years. She's had CLL and an autoimmune disease. I'm like, I can't get on a plane and go and bring it back. Like I wasn't worried about me. It's like, what if we're carriers and you got the kids here, you got my parents, you got everything else. And that's kind of when I was like, this is going to really change everything before it changed everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine trying to juggle that with bringing in candidates from all over the country. And then, they're probably like, well, how the hell am I going to get a job via Zoom? How am I going to knock her interview out of the park? But in the meantime, you're thinking the same thing about yourself. Like, how are we going to do this via Zoom?
Yeah, exactly. That's what went through ours is like, how do you make these decisions? These are important decisions. Those regional sales, first line leadership roles are most critical in your sales organization. It's like, how are we going to make decisions? The fortunate thing is that the area sales directors had a chance to meet all these people in person up to that point. These were just final interviews where I got a chance to meet them. The HR
Cool.
team got a chance to meet them. So
So
yeah,
we'll
it was an
talk.
interesting chain of events.
Well, let's talk about that too, because that's really relevant right now to not just your industry or the business world. It's relevant to everybody, right? That's going through all this stuff. But let's jump in, and I'm going to welcome you. Say it's been a minute. I'll talk about our connection, and then you say whatever it is you want to say, and then we'll just jump in and hey, tell us about what you're doing now. You know who you're doing with this. Talk about the culture. Talk about what attracted you, and the challenges you're facing right now, and how what part of your culture that you've built that you're leaning into, and what's happening. And I literally will follow your answers with easy questions, and it'll just be like a conversation talking on the phone.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds
All
good.
right. You ready to go? And are you good with
Yeah.
45 minutes? Okay. Or is that too long?
No, that's perfect.
Okay. I've had, who was I in? I was doing an interview last week. He's like, is there a chance you can keep me 3 hours? My wife's got the kids outside. Yeah, it's funny. All right. All right. My kids were hitting my phone this morning. I want to make sure they don't, because they completely pimp me. Like they'll turn the volume up knowing I'm doing a podcast. Or I told you about my daughter, didn't I? She's infamous now for coming in the middle of my podcast to say hi to you. So,
Oh yeah.
so I'm doing Porter's podcast, and she came in, and she knows Porter obviously really well. She comes in, she has this Final Four shirt on. She, hey Porter, da da da. She's showing it, and this and that. I'm like, all right, honey, go, whatever. And she goes, I locked the door. So Porter and I are talking. We're probably 25 minutes into it. And he's talking about a real deep thing in his career, and I hear the door, but I have it locked. And I look, she's holding a hairpin in her hand. She picked my lock. Okay.
Oh
So
wow.
she's 7. She picked my lock. She comes over, she's standing right here. Now Porter's like, his eyes are darting. He doesn't want to look at her because he's going to start dying laughing. Right. So he's looking, and he looks down, and now he's looking at me, and we think she's gone. Next thing I know, I got 2 rabbit ears above my head. It's unbelievable. I'm like, holy. So she's done that like 3 times now. So she's not here. So we'll be all right.
Good. We don't have to worry about that.
All right. Ready to roll?
Yeah, let's do it.
Mark, it is great to have you here on the Athletics of Business podcast. Thank you so much for taking time out of your crazy world right now to join us.
Oh, my pleasure, Ed. It's I've been looking forward to it, and it's been great to reconnect with you.
It's funny. So just for a little context here for the listener, Mark and I go back just a little bit. We go back a few years. I actually recruited Mark when he was a senior in high school, only to be shunned. So I was very grateful he accepted my invitation to be on the podcast. No, but Mark was a great high school player, a great leader. I remember you being a great teammate, an unbelievable program you played for, went on to have a really, really good career at Northeastern. And we were reconnected through Jason Bay. And Jason was our guest on episode 39, and then came on and did an encore interview on episode number 76, which is absolutely phenomenal. If you haven't listened to it, I urge you to go back and listen to both of those episodes. But, thank you to Jason for reconnecting us. We've had some great conversations, and looking forward to jumping into your world, right now, and what's going on, and what led you here.
Yeah, it's been quite a ride here recently. But yeah, Jason is a fantastic guy. He and I have been close for a number of years now. He actually helped me get into this industry. But currently, I'm Senior National Sales Director at ACADIA Pharmaceuticals. So I'm leading a national sales team of about 100 folks. And, this current environment has really been a leadership challenge. It's kind of challenged the organization, challenged all of our team. But it's been important, I think, to kind of take the approach I've taken is one of empathy. Kind of appreciating where everybody's at, because as you and I were just talking, kids are at home being homeschooled. You got folks who are having to deal with elderly parents and kind of look out for them a little bit more than they normally would. I mean, everything has been turned upside down. So leading an outside sales team, as of 5 weeks ago, we shut them down out of their safety and the health of everybody. So they've been trying to work from home, trying to, drive sales and support customers virtually. So that's been a huge, huge transition for them. So being empathetic, not only to my team, but to the customers that we're serving, providing some reassurance has been important. Through all this uncertainty, people start to, they feel at risk, they kind of go into that safety mode, if you will. So it's important to, for us to ramp up communication, continue to reinforce, what we're doing, what's being impacted, what's not being impacted, how we're handling things, even if we don't have all the answers, just letting them know that there's things that are on the radar that are under consideration. And then lastly, it's been much more critical to provide clear direction. And for myself and my team, it's about continue to be purposeful and productive. It's when all this went down within the first few days, we kind of pivoted really quick, and ACADIA has done a fantastic job of being nimble in this to provide the team and provide us resources to be able to continue to engage and interact with our customers digitally and virtually. So, we got everybody set up with WebEx accounts. We got them access to Zoom. We've provided multiple trainings over the first couple of weeks of this to acclimate the team members, because most of them, being outside salespeople, they're used to dealing with people face to face. They like being in front of customers. They like touching, feeling, and
Right.
now all of a sudden, they're sitting in their kid's bedroom or in their basement trying to find a quiet place where they can try to do some of this stuff. So that's been a little bit of a journey for us. But again, it's been being focused on clear direction, giving them some structure to their day, giving them a little bit of rope to kind of do it their way, but at the same time, reinforcing kind of expectations. Because at the end of the day, at ACADIA, the people that we serve, we have a product for Parkinson's disease psychosis. And what we've talked about and what I've reminded everybody is that, hey, folks with Parkinson's disease, their journey does not stop because there's a pandemic going on, right? So they're still dealing with, some of the non-motor symptoms that our product helps alleviate, such as hallucinations and delusions. And quite frankly, in this time of social isolation and increased anxiety, some of those symptoms are probably being exacerbated. And at the same time, they're probably spending more time with their family and caregivers who may be noticing some of these behaviors. So it's a time that we can continue to provide great value, and we've got to be there for our customers and ultimately for the patients. So, those are some of the things that we've been doing to try to navigate through this. And it's been an evolution. I think every week, every 2 weeks, we're kind of reinventing ourselves. As I mentioned, the first week or so was a transition, canceling travel, trying to cancel appointments or transition appointments to virtual, getting people trained up and comfortable. And then as we moved into, the second and third week, it's okay, now what are we doing, right? What's your approach? What's your virtual routing, if you will? How are you going to stay connected to the most important customers? How are you going to continue to provide value? And some of our customers have guided us in that as well, because they had to find their new normal. And now we're getting to the phase where I think everybody is adjusting in some form or fashion. Physicians and physician offices have kind of find their new normal and how they're interacting with patients, a lot of it through telemedicine. So now we're kind of starting to figure out kind of how do we operate here over the coming weeks. And then very soon, hopefully, we'll be at the point where how do we get back to what we normally do? How do we start to ease back into hopefully getting back out in front of customers? But we'll have to see, how long that is till that time comes.
And it's interesting. You made a couple unbelievable points here. And the one is you probably have an increased sense of urgency from your customers, right? And for your product and for your service and what you do. Yet we're in this time when everyone's trying to pause things or slow things down. But, so here you are trying to reinvent yourself every 2 weeks. What are some of the keys? We don't have all the answers, right? Like this is something that's completely uncharted waters. We're navigating our way through this. We're trying to grow through this instead of just go through this. What are some of the keys to reinventing yourself or tweaking or making a pivot every 2 weeks?
Well, some of the key, like you just said, and I love that phrase of grow through this instead of just get through this. And I think that's one of the philosophies we've taken is that, hey, as outside salespeople who are now, stuck inside, we're obviously going to have a little bit more time. And that's been one of the focuses that we've encouraged is invest in yourself, do something to improve yourself, develop yourself. And I think that's been part of that reinventing. Like I said, the vast majority of my sales team, they never conducted a WebEx prior to this, right? They never engaged particularly with a customer via WebEx. So, in terms of just growing and having that growth mindset and I've talked to the team about, being comfortable being uncomfortable. That's advice and coaching that I've gotten throughout my life,
Right.
in terms of how do you become successful? How do you be the best you can be? How do you get through obstacles and challenging times? You have to kind of embrace this idea of being comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think, we've encouraged that. We've talked about that as a team. But it's taken incrementally. It's taken day by day, week by week, so that, like you said, we can reinvent ourselves. So it's like, hey, dip that toe in the water, schedule and have a meeting with a customer virtually for the first time. There's going to be some hiccups. And then the next week, it's like, okay, I can do this. Who are the 3, 4, 5 customers that I absolutely need to connect with because, they need something from me. They need something from us. It's also been, growing through this. How do you hone your skills? You're going to have a little bit more free time. How are you developing yourself? In our world, can you shore up some of your clinical acumen and clinical knowledge? Are there resources or tools that we have that you can get more expertise on? From a personal development standpoint, the timing kind of worked out for us. We were in the midst of kind of creating goals and creating our performance management plan for 2020. So we invested time on that and had one-on-one conversations between employee and manager to make sure there was full alignment and that we had plans in place and that we were identifying tangible things that we could be doing during this time. So organizationally, ACADIA's done a fantastic job of offering development opportunities. Our people and performance department has been providing like weekly WebEx trainings. Our commercial excellence and training team has been providing trainings once a week. So we've kind of created this roadmap, if you will, so that there's, as I said before, some structure and plan, dedicated plan, week in, week out, so that we do come out of this not only surviving but hopefully thriving on the other end of it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I believe firmly, and it sounds like you do too, when we get to the other side of this, whenever that is, whatever that looks like, we are going to be so much better for it. And I believe this is a time, and I want to get into your culture a little bit. I believe this is a time where those who pay lip service to building a great culture, okay, they're going to be exposed, right? But folks like you that do things the right way, one of the things I spend a lot of time with my clients, whether it's my coaching clients or when I'm speaking, is working on building a culture worth fighting for. Okay. And I believe that people who are excelling and succeeding and growing now are the ones who already had that foundation built. Can you talk a little bit about how you folks, and you're growing, you're growing exponentially. Let's get into that too. But how have you built and driven this wonderful culture you have there?
Well, it's been, to your point, it's got to be more than words, right? You got to live the culture day in and day out. That's one of the things that drove me to ACADIA, quite frankly, is the culture that they have and kind of their mission. Being patient-centric, respect, integrity, and trust are at the foundation of what we do and how we do it. This never give up mentality, the ability and the expertise of getting through and over obstacles. But we've really honed in on the commercial side of trust through transparency, performance excellence, kindness, and fun.
Wow.
And I think through all of this, the trust through transparency has been huge. That's where I think the communication has come in, the reassurance that I talked about before, communicating, to your point, that, hey, we don't know what we're going to do. Again, in a sales world, your incentive comp plan is critical, right? Salespeople, that's what they thrive off of. Obviously, there's been a lot of questions about that. We don't have all the answers today. We truly don't know what the true impact of all this is going to be on that. And we've communicated that. It's like, hey, we're observing this, we're monitoring it, we're going to do the right thing, but be patient and let us have this play out a little bit before we make any final decisions. So I think it's being vulnerable, it's admitting you don't have all the answers, but it's instilling that trust and building upon the trust that I think we've developed through our culture. Performance excellence, it's staying focused on what our purpose is and what we're trying to accomplish day in and day out. Continuing to foster that environment of accountability. And that, to me, that involves keeping people focused on what they can do and what they can control during this period of time versus what they can't. You go off the rails real quick if all we do is talk about all the stuff that we can't do and why we can't do this. it's kind of getting people back on track of, let's focus on what we can do and see what happens with that. And then lastly, you know, we've had some fun with this, obviously, as people have gotten more acclimated to the video conferencing and so forth. You know, people've got their fun backgrounds on that. People are, you know, like myself, are growing out the facial hair. I've never had a beard in my life.
I was gonna ask. I was getting to that. That's a good look. You almost got the hockey look as opposed to the basketball look, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's it. I call it my COVID beard. So as soon as I'm off of home confinement, I think this thing's getting shaved off. But for the time being, we're trying to have some fun with it.
That is awesome. I got a buddy who grew a beard and bought a 100-pound punching bag. I'm like, how much time you spend in the garage? You said not enough. But anyways, you used a word that is huge in my world that I think is so critical, because I really believe in authenticity, right? And authentic leadership. And I break down authentic leadership in honesty, integrity, and vulnerability. And I think it's that third piece, that vulnerability and transparency, that people have such a challenge with, because they often see vulnerability as being powerless as opposed to really powerful, which it is. Was there a time when it was not hard for you to be vulnerable, but when you really had to be intentional, like, okay, I don't have all the answers. I'm going to, communicate that to you, and I'm going to include you, because I really believe when you make yourself vulnerable with your people and you give them the opportunity to be part of the solution and to have input, that emotional attachment is huge. Can you give some advice in terms of the best ways to make yourself vulnerable if it's something you're not used to doing?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and something I think that I picked up early on in my career as a leader, because I had some great role models, quite frankly. When I was at Baxter, I had several great leaders there who, that's how they led. They were authentic, they were genuine, and they weren't afraid to communicate when they didn't have the answer. They weren't afraid to tell you that they didn't know. I also think that's something I've learned through sales, right? I mean, to me, some of the best salespeople out there are ones that they're externally focused, right? So they're communicating with their customers, and if their customer has a question about something or an objection about something, they're not afraid to say, hey, I don't know, and then they go find the answer and they follow up, and that's how they show their value. So I think through multiple kind of avenues throughout my career, I think I've come to learn that that's critically important. The other thing, early on as a leader, I got the advice of, you got to be yourself. Don't try to be someone you're not, because, teams are going to see through that. Individuals you're leading are going to see through that. And I think that's something that I've taken to heart over the course of my career. And I think as I look back, even in, when I've been on teams and throughout my college career, that was something that as I think back about it, that's what some of your best teammates and best coaches, that's how they acted, right? So it's kind of, pulling that all together and teasing out. But you're right, there's been times in my career, especially early on, where you maybe didn't have the confidence to be vulnerable. You didn't have the confidence to be as humble as you needed to be. And I think that's just getting comfortable with that's part of being authentic, and people expect that of everybody, particularly their leaders, right? They don't expect something different of their leaders when it comes to that.
And that's why I think this is such a great situation for us to leverage and take advantage of. And I mean that in a positive way, because we've been pushed outside of our comfort zone for something that we have no control over. Like, everybody has a reason to be uncomfortable right now. It's okay. So it's also okay not to have all the answers. So it's a great opportunity for us to practice that vulnerability and to really develop deeper relationships, with our folks. Now, with that being said, all this adversity, and you and I both know, one of the great parts of being an athlete and being on great teams is how close you become when you go through adversity. I mean, you just go through so much crap together, right? How has that worked out for you folks there at ACADIA?
Yeah, I think it's galvanized us, quite frankly. I mean, you hit it on the head. It's, anytime you have a collective shared experience such as this that you go through with others, you grow from it. Your relationship, your trust, your respect for one another, it gets strengthened throughout it. And I've been that's one of the things that I've been super impressed and proud of is, the leadership team that I have, my area sales directors and region sales managers and my colleagues in the organization, the way folks have kind of stepped up and handled themselves, just in terms of communication, and being vulnerable and providing good direction. It's been impressive, and again, it's made me proud to kind of be teammates with these individuals during this period of time. But those are things you can't replicate, right? Going through something like this with someone, it's kind of, being in that foxhole, if you will, with someone, playing that double overtime game with your teammates. You learn about people, and you learn to rely on them and lean on them, and you just, the confidence you have in one another just builds.
And another great opportunity for those folks who might not be the most valuable, but for them to step up, like you talked about, and be invaluable. And I've got to imagine there's some people inside your organization right now that are making themselves indispensable to you because of the way they've operated. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. The first thing that comes to mind is just, our training team and, our marketing team, the individuals who have just, collectively responded to this to get the sales organization tools and resources and platforms that they need to continue to operate and continue to bring value to our customers. Some of the things that we've got set up, we can provide our product without patients ever going into the office, right? We can provide samples to them through a virtual hub and a portal, so that healthcare providers can assess patients virtually via telemedicine. They can prescribe our product. Patients can get samples sent to them, as well as then have their prescription filled, all without leaving their home. So there's things like that have already been inherently built into our model that we've been able to leverage. And quite frankly, the last few weeks, we've enhanced some of those things in response to this. So, those individuals in legal, regulatory, marketing, training, they've stepped up big time to enable my team to continue doing, what we need to do to move the ball forward.
Right. Now, that has to bring sales closer to marketing, closer to training. Like, everybody understands everybody's role. Like, we all understood it on paper, right? But the true value, and I believe, your value as an individual is how much you embrace and execute on your role. Like, that's your real value to the organization. But there's also the fact there, especially with the folks you work with, the connection and the social aspect of the day to day. How are you fulfilling that social aspect to help keep folks sane, so to speak?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things we did early on is, we implemented, daily team check-ins, right? Leveraging, the virtual platforms we have, either Zoom, WebEx, some use FaceTime, just to satisfy that. Again, keep the teams connected, keep the communication high. We've evolved to that. I'm a remote employee, right? I'm based out of the Chicago area. The company's headquartered in San Diego. So I've always been remote. I usually call in, right? We've never leveraged the video aspect of things until now. And now every meeting that we have, every conference call I'm on, everybody's on video, which, adds a ton of value to be able to see someone's eyes and see their nonverbal cues and expressions and so forth. So we've leveraged those things to keep the team connected. We also, again, it worked out in our favor. We just recently launched this workplace platform. It's kind of a sharing and collaboration tool, and the teams had a lot of fun with that. Both, we've used it both from a communication standpoint of critical information, valuable information, sharing best practices, sharing people's success during this time, to kind of give examples of, like, hey, we can do this. This is how you can do this. This is how you can operate, as well as just having fun. They've created groups of ACADIA pets and healthcare heroes, where,
Right.
Folks with families and friends who are in, healthcare providers, and just recognizing them and the work that they're doing. So we've leveraged a bunch of different platforms and mechanisms to try to keep the team connected and kind of scratch that social itch that we all have, especially salespeople.
Oh, it's a huge itch, right? I mean, that's phenomenal. So now let's just transition into what else you have going on, because you're growing through all of this. You're dealing with COVID-19. You're dealing with the elevated need for your product. You're also scaling at a pretty big rate. I mean, you're also building on your sales team at a pretty significant rate. So let's talk about how you are doing that, how you are able to move your focus from your team to building during this whole crisis, and what your time frame is, because you've obviously already shared that with me, and I'm still blown away by it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually, again, another reason why I came to Cadia, because I saw an opportunity to build. I didn't think I'd be building during a pandemic, but we'll manage through that. But yeah, we've got an exciting potential new indication for our product that we're anticipating we'll get approval for probably the end of 2020 or early part of 2021. So we had established kind of launch plans and expansion plans to support that that really went into effect late last year. I just brought on 4 area sales directors to kind of build out the sales leadership team. They started at the end of January. And then over the past couple months, we've been recruiting our region sales managers. We're bringing on 16 of those. And in the midst of doing that recruiting is when the pandemic hit, and we had to pivot and do some of those interviews remotely, virtually, via Zoom. So we're still in the process of kind of finalizing that. We're taking, we've slowed down a bit. I wouldn't say we pressed pause, but we slowed down a bit on the timing of bringing them aboard, just because there's some uncertainty in our surrounding environment of just how things are going to operate. How is the FDA going to be operating during all of this? But we still have plans to start recruiting sales specialists mid-year with the goal of having all these people come aboard sometime late Q3, beginning of Q4, so that we can get them onboarded, oriented, trained, and ready to launch this new important indication as soon as we have the opportunity to. So it's been a balancing act for sure.
Yeah.
It was going to be anyways this year, and that was one of the key focuses, key priorities for myself as we went into 2020, is that a focus, right? Because my existing team today, the team we have at ACADIA, has to stay focused on the here and now. They got to live in the moment, continue to support the Parkinson's community with our product, while at the same time, myself and the organization are building and preparing to get into a new area of focus early part of next year. So a lot of things kind of going on simultaneously. So focus and discipline, some of those key attributes that, again, that's why I love the athletics of business, because so many of these characteristics and these attributes that make great athletes, they're the same ones that make great business leaders, because you've got to have that discipline and that ability to focus to be able to execute these plans. So.
And I think that's revealed right now, right? Your character. I mean, many folks say character is built through adversity. I think it's revealed through adversity. So you bring these folks on, and you're interviewing them to build your company. And there's something to be said when you build a culture worth fighting for, you protect the culture, right? Like, you're not going to let someone come in regardless of how talented they are and disrupt the culture. And we both have teammates that have come in and done that before, whether it be in the business world, the athletic world. But how has that changed the dynamics a little bit of the hiring process, in terms of maybe questions you asked? And this is something that just popped in my head. Maybe questions you ask, or how you read. And of course, now you're reading body language via Zoom, but of the different tells you have during the interview process, is there anything that's been new or been introduced to the whole mindset of who you're bringing on as you go through this crisis?
Nothing new, but I think, any experience like this, to your point, kind of shows people's true colors, right? So even as we go through the interview process, and then as that process has been impacted and we kind of had to shift, it was interesting to see how different candidates responded to that, right? Some were very uncomfortable doing Zoom interviews, and very uncomfortable not having that opportunity to meet in person. And I think that's telling, right? Because joining an organization like ACADIA in the environment that we work normally, you have to be nimble, you have to be flexible. So there's silver linings out of having to navigate through these types of situations that I think they showed individuals' true colors. I think the other thing is to use this as an opportunity to understand how each of the candidates, what are they doing personally and professionally during times like this? How have they adjusted? What's their philosophy? What's their approach? And again, I heard multiple different kind of answers on that I think were telling, right? It kind of shows the true fabric of how individuals respond to challenges and respond to some adversity. So it's been kind of an opportunity to use this pandemic, use this situation to tease out some of those things as we look for individuals who would be the right fit, you know. And again, whenever you're building a team, it's got to be a mutual fit. And those are some of the key things that I think are important that individuals have as they join ACADIA.
And I'm sitting here and I'm processing our conversation here and the one we had before we started recording. Talk about, because I think this is something that's so critical right now for people's success. And I think this is another one of those skills and behaviors we're going to develop when we get to the other side of this that's going to help us. You and I would call it off the court, but away from the office. Talk about your ability to not just lead, your team, but also lead your family at home and be present with them and to find this balance or this mesh. Actually, there's really it's not separate. It's that way normally now, right? I mean, today's workforce,
Yeah.
they want to know that they're valued, they want to know their work's important, and they want someone to coach them, but they also want there to be a blend of their work life and their personal life. Okay, and equality. So how are you able to do that? You're so level-headed. Trust me, I've talked to plenty of people who are all keyed up about this whole situation. But how do you go about doing that?
Similar philosophies, I think a lot of these, leadership principles and just, core characteristics apply in business, in personal life. And I think, with my family, it's been being empathetic, right? I mean, each individual in my family, my wife, my son, my daughter, they all have different things going on in their lives. They've all had different things be impacted during all of this. My daughter, is going to be graduating 8th grade. So, a lot of those activities here as we get closer to the end of the school year are obviously being impacted. So, we've had to help her, manage through that and kind of keep things in perspective throughout all of this. So again, it's reassuring. It's being empathetic, because I can only imagine being 14 again and kind of having some of this stuff that you've been looking forward to for the past several years, just kind of, blow up in front of you, if you will. And then it's also been continuing to keep them productive and doing what they're supposed to be doing, not only for today, but also as they look forward, to the future. My daughter getting ready for high school next year. With my son, it's, he's a sophomore in high school. It's like, what are you doing today that's going to be preparing you for your junior and senior year or college, right? You can't let this distract you from what your ultimate goals are. So how are you structuring your day? How are you using your time? Are you sitting in front of Xbox for hours upon hours? Are you on TikTok all day long?
Right.
Or are you doing things, at least at portions of the day, that are a little bit more productive and are focused on the things that, you're motivated for down the road. So again, I think a lot of similarities in how you approach both, on court and off court, as you mentioned.
And how as a leader, I've got to think this helps you get to know your people at an even higher level. Like, you're very good at getting to know your people, but now you see them right in the throes of what's going on in their world. You see the challenges, not adverse, but the challenges they have at home, right? And you see how that impacts them and how they respond. And it gives you a better sense of what makes them tick. So now we get to the other side of COVID-19. I've got to think that's going to help you even more, put them in position to be successful, because you have a better idea of what's really truly going on in their world.
Absolutely. Again, as we talked earlier, I mean, these types of shared experiences, really help you get to know people. It galvanizes you. And I think to your point, you kind of, you learn through this and understand what people's motivations are, what they are dealing with, what are some of their challenges, what's most important to them. That's the other thing. Through some of this, you see different individuals' personal lives and how important, certain aspects of that are and what their responsibilities are outside of work, and just gives you a better holistic appreciation for who they are and what they do and what they're balancing in their lives, in order to achieve the goals that they have. So it absolutely brings people closer together. And I think it's again, this collective shared experience, I think helps us recognize what's important to us, and all that just will help on the other side of this, be more close, more productive, and tighter knit with the relationships that you have.
How about your customers? What was the approach? Obviously their world changed significantly. We touched on that a little bit, but what was your approach from the sales aspect of when this all started going down, reaching out to them and, the fact that, hey, we're here for you, but how has that helped that relationship evolve?
Oh, it's been, again, that was one of our first priorities, as I mentioned, within the first few days of this, after we shut our team down. The main priority was to reach out to customers, to let them know how we at ACADIA were managing through this and what actions we had taken. And then to understand from them, what were they doing? How was this impacting them? How are they going to be operating? And to find common ground. How can we help you? How can we continue to support you during this time as you navigate this? So it was, I think, a more empathetic approach. It was an externally focused approach to just inform them what we're doing, understand how they're operating, and then hopefully find that common ground and meet them where they're at. And in talking to some folks on my team over the past several weeks, that was critically important, because on the surface, you would think that, like, our customers' worlds are in complete chaos, and they don't have time for anything but trying to survive. And I think what we found is, by taking that approach, we learned very quickly that there was still opportunity for us to help out. There were ways that we could provide value to help them through it, and it gave us a better understanding of what not only our customers but our ultimate customers, patients and caregivers, were going through, and learning a little bit about how they pivoted to telemedicine. How they were managing these patients, how are they communicating with patients and caregivers now. So I think, again, it's taking that authentic, empathetic approach. I think it shows your true colors. I think our customers have respected that, and in many cases, it's been very satisfying to see. It has opened doors for us now as we work through this, and I think it will continue to do so. Once we get on the other side of this.
And for the last few years, we've been dealing with a really tight labor market, and all of a sudden here we are now, and it's a whole different world. How does that impact the way you go about still building up, your sales teams as you move forward? Is it overwhelming, or is it welcomed, or what's the situation with that?
Yeah, I don't think it's overwhelming. I think it's just another element or aspect of the situation that we've got to keep in mind. Certainly, as we go recruit and as we look to build out our team over the coming months, it could be opportunistic for us in the fact that some other organizations weren't able to survive through all of this, right? So there's additional talent that's available that would be valuable for ACADIA and what our mission is. At the same time, I think as my team and I work through this, it creates a greater appreciation and gratitude for the situation that we're in, and for what ACADIA is doing and how ACADIA is operating, because we're able to navigate through this, being very judicious and very smart. The obvious thing here is that everyone's being impacted by this to some degree. But to what degree are we being impacted? And again, focusing on what you can control, being smart with our spend, being smart with, resources that we're investing in at this point in time, just being prudent. So I think it's just been another element to kind of digest and to factor into how we're going about doing what we're doing, and how we stay on course on our mission.
That's awesome. So, Mark, where can folks find out more about ACADIA, whether it's the product, your mission, the way you do things, or, for the job opportunities that you have here coming up?
Yeah, the best place is probably our website, acadia-pharm.com. It's got everything to know about ACADIA, what our mission is, what our values are, the therapeutic areas that we're focused on, as well as career opportunities as we move forward. That's where you can find those.
That's awesome. All right. Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us today. It was an absolute blast. How did before we go, I have to ask you, how did you do without March Madness? Was that like one of the most odd things ever?
Oh, it was bizarre, because March is my Christmas, and I think I've trained my family too, believe it or not, my wife and my kids, where I think my son and daughter might have been even more disappointed this year. My son was planning to do a big pool at his school that he's been known to run the past few years. My daughter was planning to try to take a page out of his book and do that this year. At Notre Dame College Prep, we were planning. We had a great team. We had our sights set on going down to Peoria. The kids were looking forward to that, to hopefully go down and get Notre Dame its first state championship. So just all of March has been, it's been hard to swallow. It's been hard to deal with, but it's been very odd not being able to watch a tournament and follow all that.
So who is the college team that your son and daughter root for? Who are they following?
They're kind of copycats. They've all jumped on the Gonzaga bandwagon. I've been a fan of Mark Few and Gonzaga for about the past 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
I'm the guy who's online buying Gonzaga T-shirts and Gonzaga gear because you can't find it here in the Midwest. And I'm the guy that stays up at 10:30 at night, even though you got to travel the next morning so I can catch a Gonzaga game.
So you're younger than me. You can do that. I'm out. I'm asleep in my chair by the time they throw the ball up for their games. That or I'm stuck listening to Bill Walton watching Oregon. That's phenomenal. So no Ramblers fans. We got to get some Loyola fans in that house.
Yeah, we do. That's right. I've become a fan of Coach Moser, and he's had a great program. And believe it or not, I've been meaning to bring the family over there to see a game live at the Gentile Center. I've never been in that place yet. It looks phenomenal, and they've had some great teams. So we're definitely fans, just not to the level of being a Zags fan.
Well, I'll tell you what, Gonzaga's a great team to choose. I'm glad you didn't say someone like Kansas or Kentucky, or you know how that goes.
I get it.
Mark, I appreciate it. I really do. I know how crazy your world is right now, and you taking the time to share so much with us means a lot.
It's been a pleasure, Ed, and keep up the fantastic work.
Thanks, Mark. Take care.
All right. See ya.